What's going on, y'all? It's Miniman, by the way, here, and welcome to my YouTube channel. This is where I document all the progress on my minigame only Ironman. This video will act as an introduction to the account, its rules, and my long-term goals. If you take a gander at this screen here, you'll see a list of quests, rules, and unlocks for the account. Even though it's in the middle, I'll start off by talking about the ground rules of the account. The number one rule of the account is that I cannot gain XP outside of a minigame, and additionally I will allow myself to buy from certain shops, but only if the minigame I've associated with that shop is unlocked and playable. I've plotted out all the stores I can use on this map here, so for example, in order to use the Majorina Rune shop, I must be able to play Majorina, which means that I must complete the Majorina mini quest, and it also requires 60 magic. Another example is the Gnome grocery stores, which require Gnome restaurant to be unlocked and playable. This means I would need 29 cooking and have completed have completed the Gnome restaurant tutorial before I can use those shops. Secondary or processing skills may be trained as long as I adhere to the first two rules. Finally, I can pick up items until Herblore is unlocked, and this was a simple exception to make the first few steps of the account much more viable. Money making in the very beginning was really hard to figure out. I probably could have figured it out faster if I had done some better planning of the account, because Pyramid Plunder is actually pretty decent and has very low requirements, but I was having troubles in the beginning, and I didn't realize that, so I allowed myself to pick up some of the anti-poisons that spawn near Castle Wars, and I just sold those to the general store, basically just to get some starter cash for questing. I've listed out the major quests here, but any quest that unlocks a minigame is fair game. However, for minigames that require a number of non-specific quests to be completed, such as NMZ and Volcanic Mine, I'm going to be considering those off limits for now. The amount of questing required is just way too much for me to consider at this point, and they will likely remain off limits until a later date. I just really don't feel comfortable even putting an unlock for those right now, just because I think anything that I would unlock it behind, it would still be way too soon for me to be playing those games and doing all of that questing. A quick explanation of the unlocks. Impetuous Impulses being locked behind barrows is to prevent a lot of early game supplies, which would trivialize a lot of other minigame content. When I set out making this account, I wanted to make each minigame as relevant as I could, and Impetuous Impulses is simply too easy for training processing skills early on. I have, however, allowed myself to train Hunter to 17 when I unlock it, simply because I will already be lamping mining to 15 in order to unlock Innate of the Myrick. And I don't want to have to play the waiting game for too long, especially because a lot of randoms can't spawn, a lot of minigames can't spawn randoms, so that's like fight caves, pest control, pretty much anything that you're teleported away to a different place and it's not actually out in the open. You're not going to get any randoms there. So next, Barbarian Assault gambles will be a really good way for me to obtain some very strong supplies on this account, which is awesome, but I decided to lock Barbarian Assault gambles behind max in every roll to add a small grind before I can gamble, as well as 80 combat being a prerequisite for the attacker roll to ensure that I'm not being a noob and holding back my team with low combat stats. It's one of those things that's probably not a big deal and most teams wouldn't care about as long as I'm, doing the right calls and stuff, but it's just one of those things that would bother me if I were to start doing it at a very low level. Next up here is the definite set of minigames that I will allow myself to participate in. This is subject to change, of course, but if it is on this list, I will be allowed to play it. Volcanic Mine is on the list because I do want to play that eventually. I think that's basically going to be my best shot at training mining outside of temple trekking. But I'm going to be putting that off into the far, far future again. I'm not even going to make a decision on that anytime soon. So for now, it's off limits, but it is on the list because I'm interested in trying to come up with some kind of way that I could play that. Finally, here are some long-term goals of mine. The Rune Scimitar is what I'm currently working towards, as it will be my highest DPS option for melee. At least when I combine it with Melee Void. I think if I were to use the obsidian gear that I can buy from the store after the fight caves with Toggle, that is potentially higher DPS if I use the full set. And I forget the amulet name, but that amulet, I'll have it flash up on the screen because I'm an idiot right now and can't remember it. And then used an Obi weapon. I think that's actually a little bit stronger for melee. Anyways, Fire Cape will be the first big PVM milestone for the account, and it's probably the hardest PVM challenge that's actually possible for this account. Technically, I have access to the Inferno, but there's no way that that's ever happening. All Barrows sets is the next most likely thing to be obtained, and each will be useful in different situations. And with Amulet of the Damned, some are actually pretty strong for my account. I think Korill's especially is going to be pretty much one of my best ranging options, especially because it's pretty hard for me to get feathers, which means bolts and arrows, all of that stuff is very hard for me to get. So far, the only way I've gotten feathers on this account is through maze randoms. So I've been stocking those up because I want to save those for possibly fight caves attempts, use them for bolts. But anyways, next up would be 99 in combat skills, along with thieving and agility. All of those aren't going to be so hard to do. They'll definitely be slower than normal, but it's not going to be too far off. And then the next easiest skills are probably going to be the processing skills, like smithing and herb lore, and then gathering skills will likely be some of the hardest 99s on this account, just because a lot of my gathering methods are not that great. Stuff like farming, most of that is going to be done through Sorceress Garden, getting supplies for herb lore, and then also I'll be training it through Tithe Farm, which I'll do a little bit of because I will want to get some. I'm allowing myself to plant the grape seeds that I can get from Tithe Farm. That's kind of like one exception that I'm allowing myself to do in training a primary skill, and it's only because I think Tithe is a pretty interesting minigame, and without that, there's really no incentive for me to go there anyways, just because I'm not going to be planting any other seeds on the account. So stuff like seed box and automatic weeding, all of that stuff, it's really useless for this account. Beyond that, I'd like to get 99 Slayer solely through temple trekking tomes. Since the odds of me getting a 5 task streak I can actually do are so low, I'd rather just aim for this with Slayer. I think it's a lot more interesting to do it this way than to, get like 20 Slayer points on my way to 99. It's just a much more interesting goal, I think. Finally, all minigame related uniques would be the final long-term goal at this point. I'm probably going to be putting off a lot of the uniques for a while, just because most of them are cosmetics, but I would love to get like all of the Trouble Brewing sets and Castle Wars gear, a lot of that kind of stuff, but that's probably going to be far off into the account's future when I feel like I've kind of done everything else that there is to do. So anyways, that's my introduction to this account. Go ahead and click on my first progress video here, which should be released alongside this introduction, and I hope you enjoy the content and stick around. Thanks for watching. Have a good one.